Before jumping into the core aspects of web development, let's discuss some of the basics of the web itself. This is not specific to Flask, but these concepts are necessary irrespective of the framework or programming language that's being used. So the client and the server both need a common language to understand each other. And this language is called Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP for short. It's the language of the web. There are two main methods within HTTP that most web applications use. They are the GET and the POST requests or methods. A GET request, as the name indicates, is used to get information from the server, and on the other hand, a POST request is used to send or post information to the server. Let's look at the GET request first. When we type any URL or an address in a web browser, we are asking the server to give us the piece of information located at that address or location. In other words, we are making a GET request. The server then responds to our request and sends the data we asked for. This is called a response. And this whole process can be called as a request-response cycle. Any request or even a response contains three parts to it: a request line or a status line, 0 or more header fields, and an optional body. So here is how a typical GET request may look like. It contains a start line. It is also called as a request line in case of a GET request. The first part indicates the type of the method or request. In this case, it's a GET request. And then comes the path to the requested information and the version of HTTP. The header and body contains some additional information about the GET request. The response from the server also has a similar structure: a status line with the HTTP version and a response code, along with a header and a body. Let's now see this in action in a web browser. We can use our very own Flask application to understand this concept. First, let's run the Hello Flask program. Then type the local server address, or we can also use the localhost :5000. Now, this very action of typing or copy-pasting this address in itself is a GET request, because we are asking the server to show us the information at this address. Once we hit enter, we see the response from the server. In our case, it's a simple string Hello Flask. So to see what's happening under the hood, we can right-click anywhere in the web page, then click on Inspect, and then on the Network tab to see the details of our GET request, and also the response sent back by the server. I'm using Chrome here, but this should work with any browser. Here at the bottom, we can see the request header, which shows that this is a GET request, and the version is HTTP 1.1. The name of the host, user agent, etc. can also be seen here. User agents in our case are nothing but web browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, etc. Above this, we can see the response header, which contains the HTTP version, status code, which is 200 OK, and other additional information. We'll talk about the status codes in a minute. This piece of information at the top is the summary of both the request and the response. And the request URL is nothing but the route that we have defined in our Flask application. Under the preview and the response tabs, we can see the actual response from the server, which is Hello Flask. So this is same for any web application, be it a local server like our example, or a website like Google, Yahoo, or Amazon. The information within the requests and responses can of course be more complicated depending on what's being requested and the website that we are visiting. But the underlying structure remains the same as shown here. Alright, so the status code that we saw just now represents the state of the server responses. For example, 200 OK means the requested information was found on the server and there were no errors sending that information back. 302 means that the user has been redirected to a different resource. And errors in the range of 400 indicates client-side errors. These are errors generally made by developers. And 500s are generally server-side errors. For example, 505 means the HTTP version was not supported, and so on and so forth. So, a simple way to learn how GET requests and responses work is to understand the request-response cycle. When a user requests a piece of information or types a URL in the address bar of a browser, this very action invokes a GET request. This GET request is then sent to the server, and the server is a place where we host all the information, including our Python code. If the address or route typed by the user is found, the relevant Python function that is sitting below the route is executed. And then our program checks if it has to go to the underlying database to fetch any additional information or data, and then sends that information to the HTML file. And finally, the data is displayed in the browser as requested by the user. And this whole process is called as a request-response cycle. So that's about GET requests, their responses, and also the request-response cycle. I hope you understood that. In the next lesson, we'll learn about POST requests. See you then.